Building Blocks, 2025 in Tel Aviv, the future of tech.
Everybody, welcome probably to the most exciting session today. We're going to talk about the Bybit hack. Please take your places. I'm Omer, the moderator of this panel. Very excited to be here with this fine group of big brains here. I kind of take my job as a moderator very seriously, so I asked ChatGPT to prepare an opening moderator, a couple of sentences. So let me read that for you. So, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining. Again, probably the most exciting session of the day. Today we're diving into what probably is the most significant and sophisticated attack that we have seen in the history of crypto. On February 21st, almost $1.5 billion in ETH were stolen from the Bybit exchange. That was a multi-layered, sophisticated, well-planned attack. The incident didn't just expose a vulnerability in one single system. We're talking about something that spreads around kind of a complex puzzle, both revealing gaps in both operational security, wallet architecture, and the different interfaces that this entire industry is dependent upon. To unpack all of this, I have this fine group of blockchain security experts. And without further ado, let's meet all of them, left to right. Just present yourself and say something about your organization.
Sure. Hey guys, I'm Josh Schwartz, co-founder and CEO of Fortify. We're the first institutional MPC wallet that's purpose-built for DeFi and on-chain operations. We're working with some of the largest asset managers, trading firms, protocols, exchanges, and Web3 companies who are interacting in DeFi and with smart contracts, but had lacked both the UX and security and controls to do that, to operate their business safely. We launched a product about 2 years ago, working with over 150 institutional clients who are collectively transacting over $9 billion a month in on-chain DeFi volumes. I just say that like the Bybit attack, it kind of highlights a lot of the risks of why we started Fortify. So yeah, super happy to be here and talk about it.
Thanks.
Hey everyone, Shahar, VP Security and Trust Products at Fireblocks. We are leading digital asset management platform, one of the leading companies in the space. Been around for like roughly 7 years, working with the biggest names in the industry, and basically protecting thousands of organizations when they manage their digital asset operations. Personally, my background is I've been doing cybersecurity my whole life, and definitely Bybit is something that really shaken the market a bit. I think there's an insane opportunity here for education and learning, so happy to be once again.
Hi, I'm Chaim Krasniker, Chief Information Security Officer at Starkware, the company that aims to scale via ZK rollups Ethereum and also now Bitcoin, the company behind Starknet. Happy to be among this line of experts and speak about the largest hack in history.
I'm Yoav Weiss. I'm with the Ethereum Foundation. I'm a security researcher and also lead the account abstraction projects. So account security is something I care about deeply, and I'm quite familiar with the technical details of SAFE. So happy to discuss it.
Thanks, guys. So if we would like to dive into the details of this attack, we thought that we might be useful to do a quick rundown of the story. Can we have the second slide, please? Second slide. Yeah. Okay. So this is a quick rundown of the story of the hack. We have a good mix here of technical people and not so technical people. I also see a group of Bitcoin maximalists that kind of made their way into this panel. So let's review a couple of key aspects and go through the story quickly. First, we have this concept of a proxy smart contract. Again, this is like a setup that is very commonly used to have two smart contracts, a proxy contract that sits immutably on-chain and points to an implementation contract that is actually the business logic of the application. This is something that we use to upgrade the application if needed. And the other concept that is important for this conversation is the safe multi-sig wallet. It's a combination of a smart contract and a website that the website controls the flow of signing between multiple parties. And we have three main players in this crazy story. First one is the safe developer, one of the safe website developers, kind of now today unfamously known for being developer one. We have the CEO of Bybit, I forgot his name, his first name? Ben, right? And of course the attacking group. As you go through that, please, I mean, we can keep that throughout the session, and we can use that as a good reference to see how the story unfolds. So I won't dive into the details so much, but we can use that as a reference. So let's start with Chaim. This is the Bybit hack, but actually it's not the best title to explain the situation. What's your take on that?
I think it's much more to the story. I think it's more 100% safe hack than a Bybit hack. So it started with probably in a very sophisticated social engineering attempt against the safe developer. Probably some project pretending to be a stock application that he ran. They managed to trick him to install a malicious Docker, and with that malicious Docker, using some kind of PyYAML vulnerability, able to control his computer and then exfiltrate keys. One thing is an issue here that one developer with one key can do such a damage. We'll talk about the damage in a minute. And then from that point on, they did one small mistake. They used the AWS Show Token service, and they tried to add their own MFA. They tried as if the Lazarus group, and they failed, which if they had a OPSEC training, for that, this would raise the alarm. It didn't. So what they do, they started working the hours of that engineer, for 12 hours every day. So they changed a little bit the time that they are working, so not to see what they are doing. And they always exfiltrate another AWS key. Once they were ready with all their try, they went to the cloud and exchanges the JavaScript of safe so that it aims at Bybit addresses and also upgrades the multi-sig of the cold wallet to do a malicious upgrade and store the money.
Before we get that part, Shachar, what are kind of the super basics that Safe missed with their operational security here?
So you said that developer that was compromised, now infamously known as developer one. The take here is it's one developer. So you should not be able to compromise a single developer and immediately push code to production that touches and affects basically everyone who uses your product. Now, we're going to dive deeper into the attack, but we all know Safe was attacked, Bybit lost money, and the code that Lazarus injected into Safe was targeting specifically Bybit. But the point here is that they chose to do it. They didn't have to do it. There are some operational security aspects from an attacker's point of view of why you would do this, but essentially the malicious code was serving to everyone who is using Safe. And again, this is all based on the compromise of a single engineer, which is something that should not be possible at all. So this is the core basic.
You want to take it?
Yeah. So I would say that the answer is more nuanced, and I think that Bybit is to blame because code was not injected to Safe. Safe is immutable. Code was injected to a hosted UI that shouldn't have been there in the first place, and that's and for that I do blame Safe. I think that they could have had the UI, for example, hosted immutable in IPFS with a link from the smart contract. There are many things they could do even to protect the backend. So there shouldn't have been so much trust in the UI, in the hosted UI, because then it means that we fall back to we revert to Web 2 security, where such things can happen. So in my opinion, Bybit should have verified everything locally. And it is possible to do so. I mean, many people have been doing it for years. But the fact that Safe did not encourage this and actually had a hosted UI, which is the default for most users, that's the problem. But Bybit managing such a huge amount in a single safe, which is in itself, in my opinion, not a good practice. But if they do it, they should have their own operational security when managing it, including local verification of everything they sign, and basically not trusting someone else's server.
Yeah, I just want to quickly, I know this is a hot topic.
Can we fight?
Yeah, we have the stage ready for that. But Josh, let's talk a minute about like the operational security aspect and what basically, building upon what you have mentioned, what could Bybit definitely could have done better?
Sure. So look, I mean, first off, when we talk about blind signing, smart contracts, of course, self-executing contracts with the parameters are built into the code. One of the biggest problems is like the average person when looking at raw contract call data has no idea what it is that they're signing. And it's a very different, as soon as people started interacting with smart contracts, sort of a very different risk than what existed for sort of like the first 10 years of crypto, where the biggest concern was like losing access or to your private key, having that compromised. What's of course happening now is folks, their private keys are totally safe. They're just signing the wrong transactions because they have no idea what they're signing. And so, I think like first off, having like this was one. Parenthetically, this is one of the reasons why we started Fortify 3 years ago. I remember, hearing a large OTC desk tell us that they had signed a 9-figure transaction in DeFi completely blind, or a trader at a fund saying it's scary how easy it is for him to steal his entire fund's assets. All he has to do is spin up a smart contract, interact with it, and that just like sends, drains the wallet and sends funds to his private address. And no one at the company has any context with what it is that they're approving to allow him to sign. So of course, like one of the core pieces that just not to shill here, but that we built at Fortify and a lot of folks are building now is like smart contract enrichment, simulation, understanding before you sign like what is going to be the balance effects on your wallet are very basic components. But like you mentioned also, the other challenge is we're talking about two things here. Like if the UI is compromised, then like what's the difference if the simulation that you're seeing is like that could be compromised as well and tell you like, oh, this contract is doing a different transaction than what you're signing, and you're back to the same problem of blind signing, because you have a compromised UI. This was one of the things, again, I'll just say, we thought about. Also, of course, there's local verification as one solution. What we do, we actually independently send the smart contract enrichment via both the UI and via the mobile. And some clients actually use both iPhone and Android in their approval processes to just make sure that even if one of the environments are compromised, at some point in the transaction process, you're actually seeing the transaction that you intend to sign before you sign.
Yeah, I just want to say I tend to agree a little bit. Bybit has responsibilities because this was not the first rodeo. There was Wazirix and Radiant Capital. And if you happen, regardless of the reason, to keep 1.4 billion in cold wallet, you'll need to learn from what happened to the other attacks and make the practices, like you have mentioned on the verification, local verification, or any other in-house tools or scripts to make sure that you do it correctly. And you don't trust the UI. You need to assume that.
So you're saying in this case that the operational security team at Bybit should have learned from those cases, just recent cases with Radiant and Wazir, and okay, take this as an example to improve their internal processes.
Exactly.
You have any thoughts that you would like to kind of crystallize as upon this concept of blind signing, and then give us a more technical aspect of that?
Yeah, so blind signing is a bad practice that we still have in this industry where...
Why is this still a thing?
I really don't know. It shouldn't have been, especially with Safe. I mean, Safe not having proper integration with Ledger is a huge problem. So, it's a very common combination where you have signers using Ledger or using other hardware wallets to be signers in a Safe. But until recently, Safe didn't even show you, even if, let's say, you ignore the fact that you have to trust their UI, their hosted UI, their UI didn't even show you the same hash format that you see on your ledger. So you sign on your ledger and you get used to signing something different from what you see on the screen, which means that the ledger becomes pretty much pointless. And so that's, now what it should have shown you, actually, it should be able to parse the transaction and tell you exactly, not to show you a hash, but to show you exactly what's going to happen. You are signing this 712 message, which is going to do this and that in your safe. And the fact that in this year we still don't have that is, I mean, it's astonishing.
Yeah, but the good news that both Safe Team and Ledger Team
Yeah.
are working to change that as we speak.
Right, but then even with that, I think, so again, no, so hosted, okay.
Shachar, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, when you say is Bybit at fault, first of all, I want to say I think during the incident, and they deserve a huge shout out here for managing the incident phenomenally. Okay, they managed to retain trust with their organization, even though they were subject to the largest heist in the history of humanity, right? Like it goes beyond crypto. But this mistake of combining two products that do not communicate well with each other is what created the blindsiding opportunity. And the thing is that there are solutions out there. So I'm not trying to say it's Bybit who screwed up or missed this. I think you have your point is this is a common bad practice, like a very common bad practice, and the you know the chain of thought that brings you to this, right, is like, I want to secure my private keys. What do I think is the best way to do this is using a ledger or something similar. And then I want to avoid a single point of compromise, single dependency on a single person. The solution for this would be a multi-sig. So what's the most commonly used multi-sig? I'm going to safe. Like everything, I say it's a bad chain of thought, but it's a very common chain of thought, which is what brought Bybit, which what brings many people to the same setup, which should not have been active ever since, to your point, was X, Radiant, and other examples where you see, okay, I'm susceptible to a blindsiding attack when I use this kind of setup.
Thanks. I would like us to keep elaborating on this concept of operational security in Web3. And let's grill Web3 developers for a second here. I mean, we kind of solve in this space, I might say, we've solved security of smart contracts. We have tons of auditing firms. We pay tons of money for, I've been a part of that as well in the past, for smart contract audits, and the code significantly improved. And the last 2 years, we see less and less super sophisticated attacks that exploit bugs in smart contracts. And recently, mostly in the last year, there have been lots of companies here in Tel Aviv that push the concept of real-time monitoring, and that has been successful as well. But the maybe third piece of this security puzzle is just like the day-to-day basics of operational security and why Web3 developers, engineers, and teams suck at that. It's, by the way, open for grabs, whoever wants to take that.
I would say that Web 2 security undermines Web 3 security. We have a lot of projects rushing to production, neglecting security. Many developers fall for that, and that's, I think, one of the challenges there.
So yeah, first of all, yeah, it's we have so Web3 devs often suck at Web 2 security. That's I mean that's very obvious. Mostly because it's a young industry where many of them don't actually have decades of experience with that kind of security. But also we are building this space to make it so that a single server compromise will not lead to such situations. So in my opinion, projects that get hacked this way, it means that they took shortcuts that maybe they shouldn't have. And in some cases, you have no choice. You need to have a trusted off-chain component. In most cases, actually, you don't. In most cases, a well-designed protocol should not be exposed to such hacks just by having Web3 security. Unfortunately, that's not the case in many projects, but it could have been.
Are we seeing the rise of the Web3 CISO, this type of a unicorn? Does that exist?
Look, I think if instead of BuildingBlocks, we had here, a conference about enterprise security or cloud security, we would have said something very similar about R&D teams not having security as the first priority. And I think it's a very common mistake, and it's a very common phenomena where engineering teams do not fully see the full security picture, the full security posture of what they've built. And it's very similar with operations team. Okay, so this thing was not put up by engineers, it was put up by operational team who said, okay, we're going to be doing signing using a ledger device, and the custody is going to be managed, the self-custody solution is going to be safe, and you need to connect the dots and kind of red team this. To your point, Web3 CISO, definitely required. Like, we definitely need someone who's looking at this and kind of managing everything, but I think what sometimes we miss out as an industry is, and you all might fight about this, but is sometimes hyper focus on decentralization and the aspect of like, it's secure because it's decentralized, it's secure because it was audited, and then the feeling, which in this case was false sense, right? I'm using safe is safe because it's decentralized, it's audited, but then missing out on the bigger picture, which is I'm actually using, there's a few points of compromise and failure, which if I'm losing, if those are compromised, I'm losing everything. Okay, so to your point, Omer, about like Web3 CISO and someone who's overlooking the entire operational security aspects of an organization, who's managing, loads of money and having, insane transactions, both in frequency and in value, you need someone who's challenging the entire posture and not just saying, okay, it's decentralized, so it's good, or it was audited, so it was good. What are we doing differently?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I would just say, like, why Web3 developers, sort of suck at security is like we could all opine on. That they suck, I think we could all agree on. And back on this part of who to blame in this process, and whether Bybit should be to blame or not. This is $1.4 billion. This is a serious amount of money, and this is just the beginnings. We're talking about furthering and furthering institutional adoption. I agree with Shachar that, Bybit gets a lot of credit for how they handled the situation, how they replaced the funds. But 1.4 billion could have easily have been 1.4 trillion when we start talking about real institutional adoption, and that can't be replaced. So the fact that a company like Bybit managing other people's assets uses providers that don't have, the appropriate controls, audited controls for code review and deployment, the fact that Bybit doesn't have the right approaches for how to segregate balances to not leave $1.4 billion in one address that can easily be compromised. There are solutions out there to prevent this now, and there is more and more fiduciary responsibility when holding other people's assets, just to make sure that you're doing that.
Yeah, when we speak about decentralization, DeFi apps, actually, it's not easy for them to start working on those great security tools that we mentioned. I think foundations in all the ecosystem need to make it accessible for a DApp, for a builder, for a new builder, to get those data as a tool, as some kind of working with the grants to all of the security tooling and provide the developer from day one the experience. If we speak about real-time monitoring, protection from malicious front ends in the wallets, there are so many good companies here that do that, and I think if we make it accessible as foundations so they can develop it securely from day one, we'll do it one step further. Also for decentralized application, which doesn't have the expertise or the money to invest from the start.
That's a solid point, because we take so much effort in Web3 education, but we miss the standout Web2 education. You're waiting patiently.
So actually, I want to agree with you on the need for CISO. I think that such companies absolutely need a CISO, but let's go back to what is a CISO. What are the CISO's role? It's not just to overlook. The CISO's role is to manage and reduce risk, to manage attack surfaces and try to have as little of them as possible. And so I think in Web3 companies, the CISO's main role is actually to try to reduce their own responsibility by trying to make things as secure on-chain as possible and not have dependencies on many servers that they need to overlook. which, so it's actually part of, I mean, we should have this person, and this person's role is actually to try to make his role as redundant as possible. And for example, they could, so they could say, you know, we need, I mean, we are not going to have hosted UI in AWS. We're going to have something like, use something like OK contract, or we're going to have some way to do everything as on-chain as possible. And that's something that, that's something that a CISO should be able to do.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about who's behind this attack. Shachar, you've been investigating those groups a little bit. Can you share kind of the way they operate and maybe what's coming next for us?
Absolutely. So short answer is North Korea, and they're after all the money in the world. The way they operate, so they're after money. They are heavily sanctioned. They don't have much way to earn money, and a significant portion of that country's GDP is coming from crypto theft. The way they usually operate, and presumably it's the same case here, they target mainly engineers, people they believe will have access either to private keys or to production systems. They use very advanced social engineering schemes, mainly fake recruiting. So they are coming in, they're saying, hey, I want to offer you a job, right? So anyone here who's tried to hire engineers know it's pretty tough. So most engineers either don't respond, which is hard to be rejected, but then they say, if they do tell you no, so I would come to you and say, okay, Omer, I see you are happy at Tenderly. They're training very nicely. Would you be open to working on a part-time project? I'm going to be paying you by the hour. And I'm seeing the rates because people, you know, send me these messages from time to time, seeing the rates, it's like way above market. So they're trying to persuade engineers to engage with that. They're giving you, okay, just contribution model, I'm going to pay you sometimes $200 per hour, okay, for a side project while you're doing your day job. Once you engage with that, the GitHub project you are building on top of, you are executing this on your machine. This is a backdoor to your machine. From there, they get access. They harvest all the tokens, all the secrets that are on your machines, and from there, they move laterally, either to cloud, on-prem, whatever is available, and depending on the specific target. They've been doing this for decades, stealing money, faking money, and yeah, I think it's like one part of the origin story of Fireblocks is seeing, you know, Lazarus Group, North Korea, hacking a huge exchange and saying, this should not ever happen again. We can solve this in a different way. They're getting better and better, and we need to be protected against it.
Yeah, one thing that one angle is kind of changing in the mindset of developers. In the last couple of weeks, I've been talking to lots of different groups, and you feel this anxiety. Folks are personally, as an individual, see that they are a target, okay? Yeah. And folks are really concerned about their personal security as a developer or as an engineer that is kind of high touch with big amounts of crypto. And any thoughts about how, like, as individuals, we can protect ourselves in order not to be the next developer one?
I can share, you know, from an organizational point of view, and developers who work in an organization, I talk a lot to organizations for consulting, and after a breach happened, when they try to learn from it. But one thing that like a conversation I really remember very well is with a CISO of an exchange. The exchange was hacked by North Korea. Several people of the engineering team had the malware on their machines. Now, the North Korean did not manage to take anything. They were basically blocked. They could not move outside of the dev environment. So they got to cloud, they got to the AWS, only dev AWS, nothing in production. They didn't manage to touch the wallets, they didn't manage to touch production systems. And this was because they had a good security boundaries. Like the engineers could only touch the dev environment, And even though the North Koreans worked in like a God mode, as if they're working as a multiple different engineers, because they commerce with all of them, they didn't manage to do anything. So I would say, from a CISO perspective, organization perspective, you want to make sure you have segmentation of different networks, different permissions. From a personal point of view, don't download code you didn't write from a stranger, right?
Yeah, when we do the segmentation, like no one developer should be able to do that. That will definitely, I think, help reduce that risk. But we also need to be careful. It's not just social engineering. It can be supply chain, it can be extensions. We have seen that as well. So it's operational security for the personnel and also for the tools that we use. There cannot be a change in production for specific, it needs to be managed. Production changes. It can't be one person, single point of failure. And when you speak about personal security, the engineer would tell if this gunpoint, I cannot do anything. I don't have all the credentials. I cannot do that. That will definitely be a good thing to say to somebody is attacking you. So this will reduce the risk.
Okay, sounds good. So we still have a couple of minutes before we go for the audience questions, but maybe we could touch on the final piece of the puzzle. Yoav, you mentioned there's kind of a significant bounty going on. Could you share what's going on in the space at the moment?
So I haven't been following the bounty
okay.
lately, so it's so maybe someone else could elaborate on it. But there is a bounty going on where trying to recover or freeze as much of the funds as possible, and it has been quite interesting to watch for those who have time to keep watching it.
Okay, for sure. So before we're going for questions, in one sentence, what's your number one tip for security post Bybit safe?
Yes, I think platforms, of course, need to always be making sure that they're literally touching up any of the single points of failure because they have users that are trusting them. But I think at the same time, and again, going back to like the Bybit component here as well, users need to assume okay, you need to assume the worst and operate your security accordingly and make sure that you're putting the right policies in place and using the right infrastructure to make sure that like Shaka said, even if you are compromised, like what's the worst that can actually happen? These two have to go together. Both Safe and Bybit are ultimately to blame here, and I think the lessons are learned as a result.
You should make sure you are red teaming yourself. So especially for businesses who've been around for a while or have grown really quickly, which happens a lot in Web3. So you have to take certain assumptions, or maybe you are overlooking something at the beginning. But then, the world changes. You're seeing different attacks going on, or maybe just a different year, a different quarter has passed. You should take a look, bring your engineering, security team, look at what you're doing day to day, and see if there's a known attack pattern that would abuse it. Now, then then it kind of shows you all the errors, and then you just need to fix them, right? Like you would see that you're basically, if you stop the CFO before they sign a transaction and say, wait, what information were you relying on? They would tell you, I was looking at, the safe UI, it's coming from the web, right? But like when I signed the ledger, I didn't see anything that was meaningful. So it's like these kind of things that kind of show you the gaps, then, sort them out and start fixing them.
In one sentence, red team is? What is a red team? Just
Oh,
for the
sorry,
folks. Yeah.
sorry. Basically, a team that goes against you, it's like on your side, but trying to challenge your security assumptions. So bringing someone who's looking at your network, saying, okay, here are gaps. This is a server that's open to the internet and should not be.
Thanks.
For me, in one sentence, protect your developers, raise the cost of the attacker. As Shachar pointed out, another example, when as an attacker I see an organization that I have a footprint on, but I need to challenge my malware, it might get caught. The 0 day, the attack that might get caught, it's a lot of money also for the Lazarus group. They will go to another place. So raise the cost, protect your developers. This is, I think, the prime target right now.
Send the attackers to the neighbors. Okay? that legit?
Okay, so since the developers part was already well covered here, I'll focus on signing practices. So when you sign for anything high value, like for $1.4 billion transactions, or upgrades of some contract or this kind of thing, you should have some practices that you follow. For example, use a dedicated machine. Don't use your general purpose laptop for this because it will get compromised at some point. So you keep a separate machine. On this machine, you should be doing local verification, specifically for safe. Pascal wrote a really nice shell script with no dependencies, which verifies it locally. Then you should be looking locally at what you're signing. If it's something like a delegate call, like trying to run something in the context of your safe, don't do it. There's no legitimate reason normally to do that. So you should have some best practices, and don't be tempted to just YOLO it and sign something on your general purpose laptop.
I totally agree and double down on that, and I would add unique OPSEC practices for each organization, like something special that only you do as part of this verification to make it extra hard on the attackers, I think.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Oh.
Josh, I'll bring it back. All right, this is dynamic questioning. Tal, tell everyone your name and what is Zero Shadow for a second.
Hey, my name's Tal. Head of BD, go-to-market at Zero Shadow. We're an incident response company. Kind of helped trace a lot of what was going on the aftermath of the Bybit hack. And the question, so cybersecurity company. The question that I had was, what do we have to do as an industry to kind of make security like more top of mind, right? Like I guess all these hacks continue to take place year over year. There's a hack every week. You know, if you're paying attention to the industry, you can see millions of dollars stolen all the time. Does this something that we have to have like regulation enforcement on this? Like, you know, if you're a new crypto startup, how are you gonna build out your security infrastructure from the jump if you don't have a security person, right? Like it's not necessarily top of mind for new startups, you know, and we've seen it on our side just from conversations we're having. I guess how do we just encourage more startups to do this, you know, across the industry, whether it's regulation or, you know, general information? Just curious your guys' thoughts on that.
If I could just narrow it down a little bit, let's think about this concept of this space is not necessarily well regulated, and is that an excuse to the fact that we don't have our security in act just yet? Should we be waiting for regulation to come?
No.
No.
There are solutions out there that completely solve the problem that created a flaw here and allowed the attackers to go in and steal the funds. You should be using them, right? I think as education, later on maybe regulation, but as education, we should move away from solutions who are not giving you end-to-end trust and security, and towards these that do.
Yeah, I just thought most institutions are using them. I think like most institutions that are holding 1.4 or more billion dollars of client funds are using institutional security tools to make sure this doesn't happen.
As part of granting those projects, the solutions need to be accessible too. That's what I talked about it before.
So I don't think regulation should be the answer, but we should add more accountability. And one way to do that is through insurance. If it becomes the social norm becomes that you need to get insurance for DeFi or for any such project, now the insurance company will be the one that demands that you have proper security in place. So it will be pretty much forced on organizations to become more secure.
Thank you all. I think after this, everybody will take security just a little bit more seriously. Thanks.
All right, thank you, amazing panelists. Thank you, Josh, thank you, Shachar, Chaim, of course, and Yoav. Thanks, Omer.
Building blocks, 2025 in Tel Aviv.